Brought to you by Session Zero Studios. For more information, visit sessionzerostudios.com.
Hello and welcome to How to Be a Better DM. My name is Tanner Wayland, and I'm going to help you take one more step on the journey to being the best DM in the world that you can be, without breaking the bank, losing the fun, or destroying relationships at the table. And today, we're especially focusing on that relationships at the table bit. I mean, everyone, ever since you were a kid, ever since you were in school, has, worried about fitting in to some extent. For some people, it was more natural, more easy. Others, it was less so. We have people that are more introverted, more extroverted. Today, we're going to talk about fitting in at the table. Now, as a DM, you can't control everything about the interactions between the different players and yourself. You can control a lot, though, and you can help promote a fun, inclusive space. But it's not always easy. Let's say that you've had a group that's been together for a while, but someone leaves and you decide to invite a new friend. Someone that, maybe someone's only casual friends with them. Or it's a friend who's never played much of D&D and, they're kind of unique in their own ways and they aren't sure if they're going to fit in. That's just one of many scenarios where a player might not feel super comfortable, or they may feel like everyone else is having a great time except for them. And what that means is it means that player who doesn't fit in maybe never plays to their fullest. They don't enjoy coming after a while, which could mean they drop out. You have to start all over again with finding someone new. You could be making, be making them feel uncomfortable or not necessarily liked or safe, which is of course an issue. And then, just from a practical standpoint, if someone doesn't feel like they fit in with the group, that they're a solid part of it, they'll deprioritize making the sessions. It'll be harder to fit into their schedule, and the campaign could fizzle out, right? And so with all of these, I think it's so important to just realize that people are coming into the group from different places, right? Like different, as much as you might be friends with one friend in a specific way, someone else has an entirely different relationship with that same friend at the table. And that's something you can't account for going into it. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes people are more introverts. And of course, introverts can also break out of their bubble. They can be vivacious, they can be fun, but it's going to take a little bit more work. It's not as just natural to them, and they need to feel more comfortable before they do that. Or maybe you have a player where it's like they could fit in, but there's a specific behavior that either someone else is exhibiting or that person themselves is exhibiting that becomes basically a thorn in the side of the group. And just like a repeated pressure point that just feels a little awkward. And as much as you think you can kind of push through those, sometimes there are group dynamics and there are specific people who really need to be welcomed in a more serious way. Otherwise, the group kind of misses out on the opportunity to get to that next level, that level where every session's super fun, where even if your character isn't getting as much screen time, you're just enjoying the environment, right? There's a lot of great reasons to have your group jive, right? As much as you can have a great time with a new group, with people you don't even know. The closer you get as a group, the more enjoyable the time is.
Another ad break. Let's be real. Ads are the worst. If you're anything like my wife, you'd rather quit a show entirely than sit through another ad. So why suffer? Just skip them. Join our Patreon at patreon.com/betterdungeonmaster and enjoy ad-free episodes with exclusive patron-only content, all for just $5 a month. Look at you, all fancy with your uninterrupted listening experience. So stop wasting time on ads like this one. Go to patreon.com/betterdungeonmaster and upgrade your listening today.
We all have strengths and weaknesses as DMs. But that's why I appreciate our sponsor, worldsmith.io. If you're not confident making a map quickly, use their map generator. Or maybe you're much better at making new characters than you are creating a new NPC or monster stat block. Don't worry about that either. It has separate generators for each of those. I even made an evil reindeer mini-boss for my holiday-themed campaign. The same is true for items, quests, traps, and more. Whatever you don't feel confident in creating, or whatever you don't have time to create on the fly, you can use worldsmith.io's generators to bring your D&D campaign to the next level, which, as you know, is what our podcast is all about. Check out sessionzerostudios.com/worldsmith-podcast to learn more and support our show. Link is in the description. Now, that does leave a big question, though. How can we help certain players fit into the group? And I'm also going to share what a DM could do to make that happen, but I'll also share what a player can do at the end, because both have influence on this, right? Now, for the DM, you can make time before and after the session to talk as a group. And talk either one-on-one. I definitely encourage that. But also as a group, just talk about like, hey, how is everyone feeling? Anybody wish there were any changes? But you'll probably get a more open and free response if you do talk to people one-on-one. And especially when it comes to a wallflower, someone who is quieter, maybe less involved, talking to them one-on-one, and especially like getting a real answer from them, that's imperative. You need to find out what they're expecting, what they kind of wish could have happened, right? So take time for that. Now, aside from just conversing, you also need to make time just to hang out outside of D&D, because sometimes it just becomes all about D&D. But people really come to appreciate the various aspects of each other and of their friends if they occasionally go out for a dinner. Maybe they go watch a movie, maybe they go hatchet throwing or play board games or something, right? Something that gets you more familiarized. So don't just make time out for D&D, but also make time to do other things together. Now, another thing that you could do, and this is honestly something that every once in a while I encourage you to do regardless, but do a mental check or even write it down of how many times certain players speak during a session. It could just be a tick mark, right? It's like, oh, Brad over there, he spoke 10 separate times, that would that were actually like speaking rather than just being like, oh. Whereas Ashley, she spoke 4 times. You can do little checks. Like, don't do this every game because that's a lot of work and you're already juggling a lot. But every once in a while, when you have a little bit of leeway, mental leeway at least, just mark down how many times people are talking. You'll be able to see you'll be able to see who's steering the story, who's, making the most fun opportunities, and also who's maybe got a little bit of main character syndrome, which is not necessarily bad, but it can become a problem if they kind of crowd out everyone else. Now, especially if you do notice, even without the tics or anything like that, if you notice that there's someone specifically who doesn't speak, another tip that I have is kind of doing what teachers do in school for kids, keeping a track of who isn't participating and finding a way to make them participate, calling out to them specifically. So you could have a character, Joanna, and be like, hey, Joanna, this specific thing happens to your character. What do you do? That's a great way to, give that character the spotlight, give Joanna time to actually be center stage. So it's like, hey, it doesn't matter if she doesn't have the same energy or the same, ideas, just like the same improv ability, whatever it is. If you give them the stage, whoever they are, then that gives them a chance to just kind of learn, to kind of feel it out. Because I would bet money that the people who are the most comfortable are the people who've had practice being the most comfortable, like kind of taking the spotlight. Because it is a thing you need to practice. And they're not going to get that practice unless you give them specific opportunities individually. But on top of that, giving them, giving them a little montage scene that they need to act out, or a one-on-one conversation with an NPC, or whatever, that's a great way to also flesh out the story. And on top of that, kind of an extension of that principle, I really like minor party splits, in terms of just incorporating multiple people, slash everybody into the role playing and into the story. Because, well, I mean, here's an example. Scooby-Doo, like the old TV show, there were obviously, how many were there? I think there's 4, 5, 4, 5. There's 5, including Scooby. So with them, you'll notice that they always arrive at whatever place they're doing searching for the mystery at. They arrive as a group, and then inevitably they split up, and they go like 2 by 2 or 3s, or whatever, right? And I realized as I was preparing this thing, I was like, oh my goodness, that's why. Because I've done it a few times in my own parties. I just didn't realize why I was consciously doing it. And it's the same reason they do that in the show. Minor party splits. I mean, they always say, oh, don't split the party. I think in terms of including people, split the party. Like, encourage 2 of them to go off and do their own adventure while the other 2 do something else. Now, obviously, keeping in mind that you probably don't want to do this with like full-on dungeons or anything like that. But when they're in a town and they've got their own chores, their own duties and stuff, their own little mini quests, totally do it, because they'll get a chance to interact one-on-one. You won't just have like the 2 most talkative people in the group talking. It'll be, you have to jump back and forth between the 2 groups. And since there's only 2 in the group, or 3 or whatever, it means that they all have to participate to make the story go forward, right? They have to talk, they have to role play, they have to have their own opinions. And that's a perfect way to just make someone feel comfortable in the group, and more importantly, feel comfortable as a decision maker. Because if it's, one of 2 people, neither one of them can really sit back super easily and just let the other one do whatever. But there is sometimes, I'm giving a lot of tips that are like, these are practical ways just to get someone more screen time, so to speak. But sometimes someone doesn't fit in because there are specific problem player interactions. And these can be serious. It can be another player kind of saying demeaning comments from time to time. It could be someone bullying. It could be someone just talking over someone else blatantly. These are the kind of things that you really need to communicate about. And you can't necessarily solve it with just like being a clever DM. No, you have to address it head on, individually, I'd recommend, rather than calling them out in the group. Just because it comes across better and their pride's less hurt, but they'll still need some amount of humility to take it in. But yeah, if you have problem player interactions like that, communicate. And I'm actually going to talk more about that in the Patreon portion at the end of this episode. But for now, just remember, communication is key for solving those more interpersonal issues. Now, I already mentioned it just with this last tip, but communication is so important, not only with problems, but just for any kind of like interaction with your players. We've talked about it so much about like, hey, talking with your players one-on-one, seeing how they're liking the campaign, seeing their thoughts. It's so important to communicate. In fact, it's a really great way to just make your player trust you. Because that's something I haven't really mentioned in this episode. But trust, like, you can't help someone feel acknowledged, feel safe, feel wanted in your group unless you, the DM, are giving that vibe the most. You're giving off the air of like, hey, so glad you're here. I can't tell you how much we appreciate you being here. So just communicate that. Say it in real words and say it in your actions. And also say it in terms of how much you talk with them about their own like goals for the campaign, right? When you're talking between sessions or session 0, take their character and their character's background and their character's hopes for future interactions or bumps, bumping into NPCs from their backstory. Take that seriously. And I think all of these together will just show that, like, hey, if a player isn't fitting in, there's a lot you as a DM can do to improve the culture at your table. There's practical tips, there's more interpersonal tips that I shared, but you have so much power. Now, on the other hand, if you are a player, we always hope that a lot of the DMs listening aren't only forever DMs, but that they actually get to play in the campaigns too. And let's say that you are a player. If you are a player and you want to fit in, there's a few things that you can do that are just, it's a way to put yourself out there. It's a way to really put your best foot forward and fit in proactively. First, bring snacks. I'm only partially joking. It's not going to fix everything, but bringing snacks is a great way to show, like, hey, I'm in it to win it. I'm a part of this group. I'm not just just trying it out. It's like, no, I brought pretzels. I brought cookies that I made or whatever, right? Snacks are one of the best ways to get to the hearts of other humans. It's just a fact. Now, another way is kind of, I mentioned humility earlier. I think that so many issues come about in a party's composition if you have too many people always trying to steal and grab the limelight, instead of playing along with other players and their bits and their jokes and their quests, right? If you see that, if you as a player are trying to incorporate yourself into the adventure more, to feel like a bigger part of it, as much as the conventional wisdom might say, oh, you just need to come up with a better backstory. You need to shoehorn it in there. You need to constantly be focusing on your quest and your goal and kind of put the other players' things to the side because you are a fleshed out character. That's fine, and there's space for that. But more importantly than that, look at what the other players are doing. See what their characters have. See what their characters are trying to get started. Either it's like, oh, they're trying to look for clues to their missing sister or something, right? In the story. Instead of you being like, okay, have fun with that. I'm going to do my thing. Hop on the bandwagon. Be like, oh my goodness, your sister's missing? Tell me more about it. Like in character, of course. And then be like, yeah, let's look. And then, one, you're doing that minor party split that I was talking about. But two, you're giving, you're playing along with them. You're kind of boosting them up, raising them on your shoulders. And there's nothing, anyone who knows this interpersonally as well, no one appreciates you as much as someone that you've just validated, that you've just, laughed along with their joke for, the encouraging and supporting others will do a lot more for making you fit in D&D than just always pushing your own narrative first. So yeah, do the run along with their gag, their joke. If they're having a good time, you have your character have a great time, ride along with them. But once again, that if you're just purely focused on fitting in and having a good time with the other players, that's a great tip. Now, if you want to fit in terms of like being engrossed in the story, develop your character. And I mean, not only like, oh, you have a backstory and stuff, but like along with taking the backstory like seriously, also talk with your DM consistently. Be like, hey, this was an idea I had. Do some of the legwork for them where you say, oh, I had this idea. I think it would go this way. Also, I had an idea for an NPC from my past. I don't know if you want this, but I kind of threw together, like, I think he could be a level 3 monk or something. Kind of do some of the legwork if you're going to develop the character. But most importantly, just develop it. Be interested in it. Make it so that it plays into the world as well. And that's going to help you be engrossed personally which helps with the whole experience. And like I said before, with hanging out outside of sessions, it's not only important for DMs to encourage that. As players, especially if there's a certain player that you're just not getting along with, or that you just feel super alienated from, or just like you have such a casual relationship you can't play off of each other in sessions, invite them out to a lunch, or invite two of them out to lunch, or like them and someone else, right? That way, it's a nice thing. It's very casual. You get to know each other outside. You get to talk more. It'll be huge. Now, as always, on top of all of these things, if you're a player, the best way to fit in is just having a good time. Try not to take anything, try not to let anything get you too down. Enjoy the good times and be as friendly as you can with everyone around the table. That's always important. Now, before I wrap this up, for everyone except the Patreon members, for all of you out there, I have a challenge. Start having regular conversations with players to see how they're liking the group dynamics. Because like I said before, communication is key. And asking directly like, hey, how do you like the group? Do you feel like there's any dynamics that kind of annoy you? And then sharing how you're working on it. And more importantly, seeing, picking their mind to be like, okay, so that annoys you. What are you excited about? What would you like to pursue more? Like, that's the challenge. Having that direct and regular conversation about specifically the group dynamics. Do that. See how it helps your group. More importantly, see how it helps certain people fit in more. And then, if you're on our Discord, let me know how it goes. But until next time, please go out there. Don't get discouraged if someone's not fitting in. Instead, be proactive on helping them fit in better. And until next time, let's roll initiative.
You work 8 hours a day. You spend time with your family, and when you come home, you do work around the house. And it seems that you never have as much time as you would like to prepare for your D&D sessions. Does this sound like you? Wouldn't it be amazing to have endless material prepared for your D&D sessions anyways? That's where Roll and Play Press comes in. Roll and Play Press provides D&D 5e compatible material for any type of session. Running a one-shot? Check out their One-Shot Wonders book with over 100 one-shot ideas. Getting started with a new sci-fi campaign? Get their Game Master's Sci-Fi Toolkit to have your games much more prepared with much less effort. Why reinvent the wheel? Check out Roll and Play Press at rollandplaypress.com, see what they have to offer, and get a 10% discount when you buy something by using the code BETTERDM10, that's BETTERDM10 at checkout. Give yourself just a little bit extra help so that you can continue being the world's greatest dungeon master. You may be asking yourself, how do I get more out of How to Be a Better DM? You probably want even more tips, more entertainment, or perhaps just exclusive access to a secret society of people bent on ruling the world. Well, we don't actually have desires to rule the world, but it does sound like what you want and what you need is to join our Patreon. You'll get access to our private Discord, which will give you direct access to all the hosts of this show, as well as our other Dungeon Masters who are just like you. You'll also be able to make fan requests for How to Be a Better DM. And lastly, you just help support the show so we can give you ever better content. If you want to join the Patreon, go to sessionzerostudios.com/startadventure and join our Patreon today.